The Women's World Cup gets underway. Can Australia go all the way? PSG is in turmoil. Find out all the details on this latest episode of the Football Rundown. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Football Rundown. I'm Arnab, I'm here with Shan again. Hey Shan, how you going?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Exciting things are happening right now. The Women's World Cup, obviously sitting in Australia, we will be supporting Australia. But yeah, Australia won their first, New Zealand won their first game, and Australia had a absolute record attendance in stadium.
Yes, absolutely. The Women's World Cup is definitely in full swing. You can feel it on the streets when you go outside. New Zealand definitely had a historic moment against Norway when they won for the first time in the World Cup. Obviously, they had, I think, somewhere around 3 draws and all losses in the previous World Cups that they have gone into. So this is definitely a very big step for them. It's great to be, I think, one of the host nations, and at least getting a win right off the gate definitely builds momentum, builds confidence. Going into Australia, obviously, Australia also won. Unfortunately, Sam Kerr was missing due to her injury. The attendance and the support was overwhelming. It felt great to look at a full stand. I think there was 75,000 plus people in the stadium on the day. Just shows how much support Australia has. It was a good game. I think as a starter, it was a bit nervy, to be really honest. Ireland played pretty well, especially from a defensive perspective. McCabe played really, really well. I thought she was quite aggressive and took control and set the tone, especially being the captain for Ireland. All in all, I think Australia's prospects look pretty well for the rest of the tournament. Pretty sure they'll build on the initial win. The only worry that I have is I think Australia has one of the better midfields in the World Cup, but it's a lack of rotation or lack of options in midfield, which sort of scares me a bit. I think Gorey played pretty much every game this year that Australia's played. I think I was reading a stat somewhere where she's missed like 8 or 9 minutes this entire year, which is worrying. I mean, as you progress to the later stages of the tournament, there is a possibility of getting a bit leggy, and having that option to rotate that position or give her a bit of a rest on games when Australia might be winning a bit more comfortably, that sort of worries me. But other than that, I have to say it was a very professional performance from Australia, especially in the penalty kick. It quite surprised me. I actually thought Ford would take the penalty. Ended up being Steph Catley who took it. I was very nervous. I couldn't literally look at the screen to see if it went in or not. But I have to say it was a very well taken penalty and pretty deserved win, I thought.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm rooting for Australia, and I do agree with you. Australia has a pretty good midfield, but what do you think? Like, what are your predictions? Do you think Australia would be able to go at least to the semi-finals?
I feel being a host nation, that obviously adds to the advantage or gives them an edge. And the team itself is pretty good, and especially if they can go past the group stages. I think once Sam Kerr comes back to the team, that adds a bit more threat going forward. Semi-finals, I would think Australia as a team, that would be their minimum goal for this tournament. I think they have a good team, good group of players, a lot of young players. I think Vine against Ireland played really well. She was quite tricky to deal with, especially in the first half, I thought. As a result, I think there is enough potential for them to go to the semi-finals. And once you reach the semi-finals, anything can happen, right? I won't be surprised if they show up on the finals. Obviously, there are other big guns who would also be vying for those spots, especially when you look at US and Germany and how they have started the tournament. They seem to be on top form, and any nerves they might have had before the tournament with the performances they had in their first game, they've definitely shaken past that.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I mean, for me, I think US is playing great as well, and I think Germany. See Germany going to the final. That's how I see. Like, obviously, Germany played a really good game, and I know that we both agreed that Australia might reach semi-final, but there's a big chance that Australia might even go to the final because being that they're the host nation and the support they're going to get from the crowds and everybody cheering for them, so it should not be, as long as they can hold up on their own, as long as they can press, and like as long as there's no more injury. That's the real thing. I know Sam Kerr is actually injured, and I don't think she can return. Speaking of Germany, Germany played really well today with the 6th goal.
Absolutely. I thought that was a masterclass by Alex Popp, especially I think it was the second goal that she scored, it almost felt like she was horizontal heading backwards. It was a great goal to see. In all honesty, I have to say, throughout this World Cup so far, there has been some really good goals, really good plays overall. And anyone who has doubts about women's football being below par, I would highly encourage them to go and have a look at the World Cup, because it's really good football. And if you genuinely like football, anyone would enjoy these games. Going back to Germany, though, I thought Morocco's defense was a bit too open, especially once they have gone down 3 or 4-0. I didn't think they would come back. At that point, I would have thought that Morocco would at least try and shore up their defense, not take such a big goal difference damage, which might come into play, because I'm sure their target is to get to the sort of round of 16 at least, past the group stages. From that perspective, I think this was a very, very demoralizing loss for Morocco. But kudos to Germany. I think they were absolutely ruthless. It showed a lot of intent as to what they can bring to this tournament, how seriously they're taking it, speaks to how far they can go. Definitely a very good and a very positive start for Germany. They're definitely one of the contenders, and I would think, in my opinion, the second favorite, just because US almost feels like it's they always pull a rabbit out of the hat and they end up winning the tournament. Going to US, I think US would have had a very similar scoreline as well. I know a few of the goals from Sophia Smith early on were chalked off due to offside, which were not incorrect. They were correctly decided. But overall, I thought Sophia Smith played really well. I know it was playing against Vietnam, who weren't great, but even then, you have to go in and sort of put in the performance. However, I have to say, for US, Alex Morgan, given her what you expect out of her, and given the standards that she has maintained over the years, she seemed a bit quiet. She wasn't as impressive as you'd expect her to be. But then again, it's just the first game. I'm sure she'll bounce back and come back with bigger performances in the later games. Moving on, PSG seems to be in absolute disarray. Obviously, going on from last week's discussion that we had, Mbappe still hasn't signed a contract, and PSG now has dropped him from their preseason tour to Japan. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, Nasser El-Khelaifi has already said that Mbappe will not wear the PSG jersey again if he does not sign his contract. And he's more than willing to make him sit on the bench for the rest of the year if he decides to stay with PSG. That seems very odd, and there are a lot of aspects with this whole dealings that I don't like. But regardless of whatever there is, I still don't want a good player, a quality player like Mbappe, to sit on the bench for a whole year, which would be a real waste.
Strange, isn't it? Like, I was a bit surprised as well when they actually left Mbappe in Paris and then went for the preseason in Japan. The news came very, very shockingly to me, and I could not actually comprehend it. And I mean, I know that Mbappe might not stay till the end of the season, or even he might even leave before the start of the season. And I know there's a lot of talks going on, a lot of rumors that he has already agreed to personal terms with Real Madrid. But at the same time, with PSG, I understand that they're trying to show that Mbappe is not bigger than PSG as a club, and they are not afraid to put a big name on the bench if they're not disciplined enough. the way Mbappe spoke about PSG a few weeks back, and also their ex-sporting director Leonardo, I can assume, I can see that might have actually angered a lot of PSG board directors, which is probably one of the reasons why he was not selected to go with them. But then again, if for some reason no other club can afford Mbappe this season, then can PSG really afford to bench him for the rest of the season? I mean, he is right now one of the best players in the world, if not the best. And benching him, obviously, from his personal development, that's a negative way to go. From PSG's perspective, yes, they can show that, PSG is bigger than Mbappe. But saying that, if you look back at previous seasons, Mbappe has been scoring like crazy in PSG, at least in the league, right? So I do not know what's happening, but at the same time, I believe that the reason it might be happening is that PSG are actually looking to get rid of him as soon as possible. I know that they have actually put Mbappe on sale officially, but it needs to be seen that who can afford it. And there's a very, very interesting report that I've read today. It's about a Saudi club who has put a massive bid, 300 million bid, with a Real Madrid release clause, which is quite surprising. Their clause is basically Mbappe will play for next season so that he doesn't have to sit on the bench at PSG. And at the end of the season, he will be released or he will be sold to Real Madrid. That's one of the clause. And I kind of feel that it's going in a loop, like PSG giving Mbappe a lot of power. For me, I personally believe, no offense to Saudi League and everything, but that will be a step down from the elite football. What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think Mbappe will end up in Saudi. It's at the same time, I also don't think Mbappe will sit on the bench at PSG either. But obviously, if it comes down to sitting on the bench at PSG and not playing at all, yeah, might as well go and play a year in Saudi. I don't see the harm in that. I haven't really gone through the report and seen the validity of it yet. But PSG seems quite serious about moving on from Mbappe, and they have recently put a bid, or at least have been in conversation to lead up to a bid for Rasmus Højlund and Harry Kane, which also shows that they are trying to find solutions to mitigate the situation once Mbappe leaves, or if they stick to their word and not play Mbappe for the entire season. Obviously, they need to fill that gap. So obviously, they need players in that position or similar position. So a Kane or a Højlund would definitely give them options. But saying that, I still think they will push through a transfer this window. I cannot see a way back for Mbappe other than signing a longer-term contract, and especially with his recent actions. Even if PSG offers him a contract, the pay or the financial side of things might be more lucrative. But I don't think PSG will once again give Mbappe the keys to the castle. I think PSG has learned from that experience, and even if they offer him a contract, that would be more on PSG's terms rather than Mbappe's terms, which obviously makes sense. And in terms of making Mbappe sit on the bench, in all honesty, I know what you're saying in terms of if they can afford it, but the thing is, if they want to make a statement about player power versus club power, then it's a very expensive bullet to swallow, but that might be the bullet they have to swallow to at least avoid this sort of a situation with another player in future. Obviously, they have to start with the contracts they hand out, but at the same time, it's setting that tone to all of the players. And especially, I think, what you mentioned about his comments, Mbappe's comments, about PSG and his teammate. I don't know how much of a harmony Luis Enrique would get if Mbappe is still in the dressing room as a key player of the team. I don't think that really sends a very good message to the rest of the players either. And there has been rumors about PSG's dressing room being fractured as is. So I don't think adding fuel to the fire helps anything. So getting to the bottom of it, I think PSG will somehow get rid of Mbappe this season one way or another. It's, I think, a matter of when rather than if. The only question mark is how much money can they realistically recoup from Mbappe at this point, because I do not think any club would be willing to pay big amounts, especially knowing that PSG is desperate to sell. We'll have to wait and see, but I think it's becoming a drama that will continue for a while longer, so we can always look back to it at some other point.
Well, this might be a blessing in disguise for PSG, to be honest with you. Maybe they needed this hard blow so that they could actually have a proper project, strengthen their core, and move on. And they've chosen a really great coach. I love Luis Enrique. And I believe that, I kind of feel that this came to a point where they're building from the scratch again. And I think Luis Enrique would do great. And in a matter of a season or two, PSG might become very, very strong. I know Messi is gone, Ramos is gone, Mbappe probably going out as well. The bigger names do not actually matter anymore. The total game has changed right now. It's all about playing in a team rather than relying on one individual talent. Obviously, Mbappe is a great talent, but then again, to win a Champions League, you need more than just one individual talent. And that needs to come from the whole team. The whole team needs to pull in together. And what you said is completely right. I felt that from the last season as well, the PSG dressing room was not at its best. An ego such as Mbappe's would definitely not portray well to the youngsters who's coming to the club. And PSG now going for Kane, Holland, then they've got Asensio. I think they are in a track to compete in the Champions League strongly.
Sure, absolutely agree with that. Talking about having a fresh start, what do you think will happen to Neymar? Do you think PSG will sell Neymar, or will they keep him around for a bit more time?
My personal belief is that if Messi's gone, Ramos gone, Mbappe, 98% sure he's leaving either this season or the next, and they might want to hold on to Neymar for experience, for that a little bit extra talent. I mean, if Neymar is gone as well from the team, then no disrespect to all the players who are still there, but then again, Neymar, Mbappe, Messi, they were all one of a talent that you don't see every day. And you need a player like that to, believe, to motivate the whole team, There's someone to rely on, even though maybe he's not going to do well. But then again, even from the bench, that sends out a message to the youngsters. I personally believe Neymar should stay, and PSG might not want to get rid of all of their star players all at once. They might want to hold on to Neymar. If Mbappe is leaving this season, then I believe they should hold on to Neymar.
I actually think it's, like you said, it's a good time to start from scratch. And on that note, I think Neymar could be sold, and I would like to see Neymar being sold, especially his fractured relationship with the fans. Neymar, although he came in with a big transfer fee, came in as the main player for PSG, I don't think it has worked out for Neymar at PSG at all. All in all, I think, especially with his age, his lack of leadership, yes, I understand that he has experience, but I think there is a bit of leadership qualities that is required for that sort of a role, which I don't think Neymar really has. All in all, I think he would be moved on. Obviously, the news and the rumors and PSG as a club themselves currently are focused on Mbappe, and understandably so. But once that is a bit more clear, I think their focus would be to get rid of Neymar and moving on with a newer team, which might see them struggle in Champions League or even the French League for a season or two. But they might build a much stronger foundation, a stronger base from which they can slowly add these stardusts going forward. So we'll just have to wait and see. In other transfer news, obviously Chelsea has been chasing Moises Caicedo for what it seems like an eternity at this point. Obviously Chelsea had bid £70 million. Brighton, on the other hand, especially after the transfer of Declan Rice, who went for over 100 million, Brighton is holding out for at least 80 million fee, maybe some add-ons on top of that. bringing it up to maybe 90, 95 million, because they obviously think that Caicedo is at least at the same level as Declan Rice, if not better. It's very interesting what's happening at Chelsea, because obviously Chelsea has gotten rid of, about 14, 15 players? I mean, including Felix, whose loan term ended. And they have brought in looked at it today, and it was 250 million euros. Even with that, Chelsea is at a deficit in terms of FFP, because I think they have spent over 450 million over the last year alone. And that puts them in a very tight spot in terms of making these crucial transfers happen. Obviously, Chelsea needs midfielders because they got rid of a few. Mount went to United, Kovacic went to City, Havertz went to Arsenal. But then again, I don't think they can, or they have the funds to really push for these sort of transfers. On the other hand, I think Pochettino has already started complaining about the squad size being too big, even after the transfers that have happened. I think during one of his press conferences in the preseason tour, he has already said that Chelsea's squad is a bit too heavy. It's a very interesting situation for Chelsea. I'm sure Pochettino wants to have a very lean squad for next season, given that they're mainly playing Premier League and the Cups in England. They're not in Europe at all. What are your thoughts on that?
To be honest with you, I'm not really sure what Chelsea's going to do next season. Yeah, they sold a lot of players, and I think they're in a situation where Pochettino needs to... I feel it's very similar to PSG, that he needs to build this new team to compete in the top four again. That's what I can say. I mean, Chelsea is as much in turmoil as PSG, and there are a couple of things that Chelsea needs to do. Obviously, they must get some new players, but they can't because of the FFP rules and all. With all the players gone, I personally feel that they might actually miss Kovacic the most. And yeah, similarly, they need to strengthen a lot of their players. I mean, a lot of the spots. And at this point, there aren't much players that they can pursue, given the dynamics of the market right now.
They'll find it difficult to balance their books, essentially. That is, I think, their biggest struggle at this point. I don't think attracting players for them is still a problem. I think most players understand that Chelsea still has the ability to compete for the top four in the Premier League, go up to the Champions League. But it's more the matter of not having the flexibility in the funds due to their poor spending, to be really honest. And it's in a very tight spot right now for Chelsea. So we'll see how Pochettino drives this club forward and how much the owners intervene. I think that has been the crux of the main issues over the last year, at least. Moving on, there's this rumor that Kyle Walker is moving to Bayern Munich, which seems to be now, you can almost call it an exodus from Man City. Obviously, Gundogan's left. Mahrez seems to be on his way to Saudi. Kyle Walker seems to be very keen on a move to Bayern. There is already questions about the future of Bernardo Silva. How much of an effect do you think these transfers will have on City? And why do you think these players, just after winning a treble, willing to just move out of City?
That's a really good question, honestly. Look, with Bernardo Silva and Kyle Walker, Bernardo Silva, I feel, has been in City for a while, and he might want to look for a new challenge, and most likely he will end up in Barcelona, if I'm not wrong. I can't come to a clear conclusion that why this player who just won a treble with City are moving out. The only plausible explanation would be like they're just making way for new players to come on. Pep definitely wants more hardworking players. These players have worked really, really hard at the Pep, and at this point, they might feel like they might not be able to give their best next season as well, obviously. Kyle Walker is 31, Bernardo Silva is, I think, over 32, if I'm not wrong. So this might be one of those things. And the way Manchester City plays, high press, high passing and everything, they want to leave the club at high rather than, dipping their form and then leaving as a retiree.
Possible. I think the other thing that comes to mind is obviously Pep has declared that he's not going to continue past his current contract at Man City. So that might put some ideas in players' minds that while there is opportunities for them to move, get big moves, to have those moves done. Because once Pep leaves, although City still has a very good team, but I think we have all seen effects of great managers leaving clubs in the past and the club sort of regressing to a point. Obviously, you can go back to United. I think even when Pep left Bayern, it was very difficult for Bayern to replace Pep and the quality that Pep brought to Bayern. It just could be a preemptive move for some of these players, thinking that instead of risking everything with City for the next 2 years, might as well get moved. Especially and look, I mean, barring Mahrez, the rest of the moves are to big names in Europe. If Kyle Walker goes to Bayern, there's a good chance that he wins a treble with Bayern next season. You can't write that off, especially if Bayern ends up getting Harry Kane, which seems a lot more plausible now. I mean, I think we spoke about how Danny Levy likes to drive a bargain and how reluctant he is to sell Kane. But apparently the majority owner of Tottenham has told Levy to either get Kane signed for an extension or sell him right now because he does not want to give up on £100 million transfer. That's essentially how much Kane would most probably go for. I can't see Kyle Walker's move being a bad one, but it's just a bit surprising that right after the treble, players are starting to move out. It might be, like you said, club-driven, that they just want to refresh the squad while Pep is there and build the team so that once Pep leaves, they have a very solid foundation for the next manager to take on. City is definitely going through some big changes. I don't think that will still drop their standards much, but it is definitely, there are some changes that are definitely happening. Moving on to the other side of Manchester, Harry Maguire have been stripped of his captaincy. Obviously, it's no secret that United wants to sell Harry Maguire, and especially since Ten Hag has come in, it hasn't really worked out for Maguire. In my opinion, barring the first year, 18 months, I don't think it has worked out for Harry Maguire at United, full stop. Do you think he should leave, or do you think he should try and fight for his place? Because I have heard a few arguments that he should try and fight for his place. And if he wants to leave, what are the options?
Look, as much as we roast Harry Maguire, the thing is, he's also a player, he's also a person. And the journey at Manchester United wasn't really kind enough for him. And I personally feel he should leave, get a change in atmosphere, get a change in the dressing room, get some new teammates, and maybe it might work out for him. There is a reason why Maguire was able to come to United. There's a reason why he was bought to United, and those reasons are not just solely based on a coach's preference. It's also the player's ability to play, his technical abilities as well. But I feel coming to United and all the pressure around him, he kind of lost his groove, and he just needs a change in a different club rather than fighting for it. Yes, you can say he can fight for the next season and all, but if he doesn't leave right now, who will take him next season? I mean, who's going to buy him next season if United doesn't let him leave right now? I think it's in United's best interest to sell him, and it will be in his best interest as well to find a new club, get the things running as well, because he's only 30 years old right now. He might be able to play more 5-6 years at max. Being the player he isn't as bad. Like if you look at smaller teams like Aston Villa and everything, I'm not saying he has to go there, but then again, he should be a good buy for any club who are looking for another defender. I mean, these days you don't get much defenders anyway. Harry Maguire, from my personal view, he should actually make this move. He should probably try to find another club, maybe talk to his agent, get something rolling for him.
Agree with that. And I think especially with the Euros coming up next year, obviously he's still an England international. And I think something Gareth Southgate told him is if he does not play regularly, obviously his place in the England team might be at risk. And just because of that, that should give him enough urgency to basically get a move done. Obviously, there has been some offers to United so far, the main ones being from West Ham and Chelsea, both of which have been loan offers. And I don't think at this point United really wants a loan deal for Harry Maguire. If they are to part, I think United wants a permanent deal rather than that being a loan deal. The other option that has been talked about in the papers is Tottenham being interested, especially Ange Postecoglou likes defenders similar to Harry Maguire. The only issue there, once again, is his lack of pace. I think Postecoglou is a manager who likes to play a high line, and Maguire definitely struggles with a higher line. That's what we have seen under Ten Hag. When United pushes up, that's when Harry Maguire struggles the most. But I agree with you. I still think there is a decent player there. It's just not the right fit at United. It's the wrong time, wrong place sort of a situation. I'm sure if he moves to another club, I don't think he has to look at clubs fighting relegation either. I'm sure he can find a place within the Premier League in a decent team and almost restart his career, because I think he has sort of gone sideways, if not downwards, since his move to United. And I think a change of scenery for him will definitely help him. Talking about United, obviously United recently played a preseason game against Arsenal, which they won 2-0. Bruno scored from outside the box, and then Sancho, a few minutes later, through a defensive mistake from Arsenal, went through and scored the second. What do you think of the game? Anything that piqued your interest?
It was a good game, honestly. A lot of rotations, a lot of changes. Arsenal, I liked how United played, but there were times where I felt that they could have done a bit more. The only thing that caught my attention was the injury, because, when you come to preseason, you don't want any injuries. Honestly, that's the last of the things that you want, that you start off a season with injury. But rather than that, overall, it was a good match and it was a well-deserved win. That's how I looked at it. I mean, with Arsenal, with all the players they had, the new recruitment, I thought they would put up a bit more fight than they did. That's the only thing I can say from there.
I think you're right in terms of the match itself. Although I would think that Arsenal did play well, especially in the second half. But then again, it's a preseason game, so it's hard to really understand a lot of it. But from patterns of play, Arsenal continued with what they have done last season, and a lot of it seemed to be just carrying forward, just improving and tweaking little things here and there. From United's perspective, I think even with the previous two preseason matches that they had, obviously Ten Hag has played a more possession-based football. It seems to be an evolution of that philosophy in this season. A lot of it has to do with the fact that De Gea has left the club and Onana has come in. So the playing patterns, especially out of the back, seems to have changed a bit. My key takeaways or highlights were essentially Kobbie Mainoo, the young player who's just come out of the youth team, played in defensive midfield. In all the 3 games that he has played so far in this preseason, I think he has shown a lot of potential and definitely has put himself up there to be included in the conversation on games. Obviously, I do not expect him to start any of the games during the season, but it's a good option to have and definitely one to keep an eye out on. The injury that you were talking about on Amad Diallo, obviously very sad, although I don't think it has turned out as bad as it initially seemed. I think he left on crutches, which looked really, really bad. Obviously, this is a big season for him. He has had a great season with Sunderland last year, and it's almost time for him to prove that he can make it in the first team at United. I think if he can't really make a impact or an impression this season, I don't know how long more United will stick with him or keep him around the club. They might want to eventually get rid of him come next summer. Moving on to another preseason match, obviously Madrid played Milan recently. The game ended in 3-2. What were your takeaways from that?
Well, it's pretty similar. Milan played really well the first half. Madrid, they changed like 5 or 6 players at halftime. So they started off with Cruz. Surprisingly, they played in a 4-4-2 diamond formation with the Neoloni, Joselu, and Brahim Diaz up front. Things did not actually pan out really well because I could see that Mendy was still struggling to defend on the left. He could not cope up. It felt like he wasn't himself. It felt like the Mendy we were used to seeing 2 seasons back. It wasn't there. Something was missing. And I could see most of Milan's attack were from the right side, from the right flank. And both of the goals, they were actually made from the right flank, except for the one. But yeah, all the attacks mostly came from the right flank. And Madrid change pretty much everyone from midfield to the top. I mean, the front too. Vinicius came on, Rodrigo came on, Tchouaméni. They played really well. And then on the second half, they picked up 3 more goals. What surprised me most was Bellingham. He started the game and he played till like 70 minutes. He was pretty good, like playing his first game in a Madrid shirt. He played really well. And I could see that his potential will eventually develop more into a more attacking role, very similar to Modric. And when Modric came in, he kind of dipped a little bit, but then again, you could see flashes of him. And then, Vinicius was being himself. Second half, when Tchouaméni came in, I think Valverde was able to attack a little bit more, go up front a little bit more. And he scored 2. And, Vinicius, I saw the game. He was electrifying, to be honest with you, if he holds up with this form. And if Mbappe joins in as well, then it's going to be a brilliant front attacking side.
I agree with that. I think I'm not so worried about the attack from Madrid, although I still think they do need a striker. And even with Mbappe, I think his tendency is to drift wide on the left, and that might become a problem. But the bigger takeaway that I had from this game was more around Madrid's defense. I think the midfield is pretty set, and I think this is what we discussed last week as well, where we did say it would be Cruz at the base, Valverde, Camavinga on either side, and Bellingham at the tip of the diamond, which is essentially the exact midfield that Ancelotti played in the first half at least. But it's the defensive instability and lack of surety there is where I think Madrid might falter. I mean, obviously, especially in the first half, Courtois wasn't in goal, and he definitely is a huge impact on how the defense organizes themselves. Obviously, you have mentioned Mendy. Nacho definitely playing at centre-back did not really help the cause either, especially along with Mendy on the same side of defense. But overall, I think that is a bigger concern for me. I mean, it's the same with Milan as well. I don't think the attacking output that you saw from Vinicius is going to be sustainable and consistent enough from a goal-scoring perspective that you can just ping the whole season on that one guy. And look, to be really honest, I don't think that's the formula for success either. All in all, I still think Madrid is short a striker, and it seemed a bit more apparent to me on the day. And I still think defensively, Madrid becomes a bit more open. It might be because Cruz has lost a bit of his legs. Obviously, Tchouaméni can sort of fill in that position and be a bit more mobile. But I don't think Tchouaméni has really recovered his form somehow, and he has sort of dropped. He still has the quality and the technical ability that he always had, but his performances have definitely taken a dip. But it's, once again, very early in preseason, so hopefully both Mendy, Tchouaméni can bring back their sharpness, their fitness. And I think towards the end of the preseason is when we should really judge their abilities. I think at this point, the most you can focus is on pattern of plays. And definitely, it seems unless an Mbappe walks through the door, Madrid will play a diamond in the midfield with two up top. Although I think Bellingham, the role he was given to sort of play almost centrally, not exactly a false nine, but he kept on pushing forward centrally and occupying those striker spaces. I think that might be a pattern that you would continue to see preseason develops and we'd roll into the season, especially without a striker. Definitely a very positive start for Bellingham. He played well, once again, considering that it is a preseason match. And this is the first time he's generally playing for Madrid. All in all, good outcome for Madrid. I think it was good for Milan as well. Milan obviously has just got Pulisic recently, so it was a good outing, although I still think Pulisic needs a lot more to prove himself. This is his do or die scenario where this might be his last chance at a big team in Europe to make a name for himself and once again establish himself as a game winner. That's it from us this week. Please join us next week when we cover more of the Women's World Cup and the preseason matches. Thank you for listening to us this week. We'll be back soon. And let's go, Matildas.